This is my inventory of Mexican opal. Most of it is old stock that I bought long ago. I am always on the lookout for Mexican opal rough, but I tend to end up going through piles of rough, and if I'm lucky, I'll only find one piece that I want. The problem is most Mexican opal rough is either included or poorly shaped. A lot of it is shaped like a pancake, and you just can't get a decent return on the carat weight of the rough when you cut it into a gemstone. For me, over the past 3 years, I think I've only added 2 pieces of Mexican opal rough to my inventory, again after searching through piles and piles of rough in Tucson. I am going to closely examine these 3 pieces of rough and select one to cut. Okay, I've got our first piece of Mexican opal in my refractol, which has the same, this liquid has the same refractive index as quartz, which is not the same as opal, but it's close enough that it allows me to see through the stone, and I don't see any fractures or inclusions to be concerned about. So this stone should produce a nice internally clean stone. Here is the second stone. With the refractol, I can see some internal fractures. I believe I could cut a nice gemstone out of this piece of rough, but I'm not sure if it would be completely clean internally. I think I'll save this piece and cut it in the future. And our third stone. It has some surface issues that's making it a little bit hard to see into the stone. There is an inclusion right there where the tweezers are, that black spot. Otherwise it looks internally, looks pretty clean. I believe this stone will cut a nice gemstone, but I like the first stone I examined the best, so I'll save this piece of rough and cut it in the near future. Now that I have selected a piece of rough to cut, I need a design, and based on the shape of this rough, I think it will cut a nice large round gemstone. And my favorite round design is the Portuguese cut. There are a lot of Portuguese cut designs available to choose from, but I personally like the simple Portuguese design designed by the late Jeff Graham. Jeff put about 24 of his favorite designs onto the public domain for any cutter to cut, and although his website is no longer available on the web never forgets. And I once made a video showing you all how to go back in time on the web to Jeff's old website and find all of the designs that he put there in the public domain. Here is a link to that video if you're interested. There are also a number of great articles and advice on gem cutting by Jeff on the website, so I would recommend that you take a look at sometime. You don't have to go to Jeff's old website to see this design, as I will show it to you here. You can see that a Portuguese design has a lot of facets to cut and polish, but to me the result is always a unique and eye-catching gemstone. I did put Jeff's original design into the Gem Cut Studio or GCF software, and I did tweak the angles of the facets on the pavilion or bottom half of the gemstone slightly, and I got some improvement in brightness of this design when I used GCS and made it for cutting opal. I won't show you here how to use the GCF software because I made an entire series of videos about how to use GCS, and then I put them all into one playlist in YouTube, and I also added all the other videos that I could find on using GCS, so you just have one place to go look for all the GCS videos. And here's a link to using GCS if you're interested. So now let's start cutting my Mexican opal. Okay, I've gone over the first two tiers or rows of facets on the bottom part of our Mexican opal, as well as I've gone over the girdle, and I did all that with a 320 grit topper lap diamond grit. It didn't need anything rougher because this is Mexican opal. It cuts and polishes very easily. So now I'll go over everything with a 600 grit topper because I still have that, I've hit the white inclusion that was in the stone. And so I need to bring the pavilion down a little bit. I still have a little bit of room for the crown and the girdle where I don't have to make the stone any smaller. So it just depends on how far I have to go down to cut out this white spot here. Okay, right there is that white spot. So I went over our gemstone with my 600 grit topper, and the inclusion's almost gone, and I didn't bring the second row all the way down yet, which I'll do with the finer facets, finer laps. So I'll be able to get rid of this inclusion with the next set of laps. I started with the 320 grit topper and then a 600 grit topper. I'm going to go straight to a 3000 grit diamond on a bat lap, and with that lap I'm going to pre-polish and get rid of this one inclusion, and without trying not to make the stone any smaller, but leaving enough room for the upper half of the stone. Okay, with my 3000 grit diamond on a bat lap, I cut this one facet on the pavilion and brought the pavilion down a little bit, and this is at the 18 tooth of my index gear, and that's where that white spot was. So I did bring the pavilion down just a little bit, but that got rid of the white spot. So the question is, do I have enough space for the crown? And the way you figure that is in the instructions. It gives you what's called a C/W, and that's the crown to width ratio of 2.07. So you measure the width of your stone and you multiply it by the 0.207 C to W factor, and that gives you how much space you need for the crown, but you have to also add the space for a girdle. So let me run the number real quick. So the width of my stone, when I measure it with my calipers, is 9.6 millimeters, and that's the width of the stone. So you multiply the 9.6 by 0.207, and that gives you 1.98. So you need about 2 millimeters on the bottom, plus however much you want your girdle. And again, a girdle width is arguable amongst cutters. Generally, for me, it's between 0.3 and 0.5 millimeters is how wide a girdle should be. Some people say 0.2 millimeters. Some people make it a percentage of the width. But in any case, 1.98. And even if I went by 0.5, that would be 2.5 millimeters. So on my calipers, I just dial in 2.5, or in this case, 2.52. And that width I have to have that much to cut the crown, and you just take the calipers up to it, and I have enough to cut the crown. I'll probably, and the girdle will probably come in a little bit as I go over it with my finer and finer laps. So I'm fine with the space left in the stone to cut it without making it smaller. Okay, so I finished polishing the first row of our Mexican opal, and I used my creamway lap, but I did not use any cerium oxide spray. I just used the creamway lap with just a water drip, nothing added, no other oxide. So, and that's what John Rolfe had told me when I spoke with him last year at the Franklin Frolic up in North Carolina. He came virtually, but I asked him about the creamway, if I needed to always use the aluminum or cerium oxide spray with it. And he said, no, just run it with a drip of water on it. So I tried that here, and it polished right up. So I'll continue working on the rest of the facets. Okay, I finished polishing the bottom half of our Mexican opal, and now I'll transfer the stone and cut the upper half. I finished polishing the upper half of our Mexican opal, so now I will set up the table adapter so that I can cut and polish the table, and then we'll be done with this gemstone. Okay, I finished polishing up the table with my creamway lap with no spray other than a slow water drip, and I'm ready to soak our stone in the acetone. We'll then weigh it, measure it, and send it off to BOPIE. Today I cut a red Mexican opal into a round Portuguese design. I do love cutting Mexican opal whenever I can find the right piece of rough to cut. Mexican opal cuts and polishes easily, and I find that I can skip a lot of the cutting laps and move right to polish quickly because it doesn't take much to cut Mexican opal. And it seems like I'm always learning something new, and today was no exception. I polished this gemstone with the creamway lap by Gearloose, but normally I supercharge the creamway lap with a spray of cerium oxide powder mixed with water, but not for this stone. I polished all the facets with just the creamway lap and a water drip, no cerium oxide spray. That's a first for me, and that worked fine, at least on Mexican opals. And it's because they polish so easily. So the creamway lap and a water drip to keep the stone cool and lubricate the lap was all that was needed. This Portuguese facet does take more time to cut and polish than a standard round brilliant, and that's due to having a lot more facets. In fact, there's a total of 145 facets in this design to cut and polish. But to me, the extra time spent cutting and polishing all those extra facets is worth it, as a Portuguese cut gemstone is dazzling. And I believe that gem cutters of any skill level could cut a Portuguese design, and I'd encourage you to give this design a try. I think you'll like it. It's my favorite for rounds. Please let me know in the comments what you think of the design and of my Mexican opal. And as always, happy fastening, everyone.